Hello, everybody, and welcome. My name is Johanna Dinsdale from Multi Therapy. I'm a qualifying psychotherapist and hypnotherapist, and today I'm going to be talking about some fictional therapy case files. I find listening to these case files really relaxing because they're so intriguing, so interesting, and I find you can learn a lot about, us as humans. It might, put some pieces together for you for people that are in your life. And this is a surprise live stream. Typically, I don't go live on Sundays, but last Thursday, the live stream crashed. So here we are to finish up our intriguing stories. Hi, Matt. Welcome. I'm glad you caught the live stream. We're just about to get started with the case files that we missed out last time. So let's dive into things. And then between each case file, I'll check in with you guys and see what you think. Absolutely. Detective Joe is on the case. So the first case file is called The Man Who Was Erased. That's right. Silius V walked into the clinic, but he didn't check in at the front desk. He simply stood by the wall, perfectly still, waiting and waiting. When the receptionist finally asked if she could help him, he looked genuinely surprised. Not that she spoke, but that she could see him at all. Silius is a healthy, solid-looking man in his 30s, yet claims he is no longer online. He refuses to shake the clinician's hand, not out of rudeness, but because he insists his hand will pass right through the doctor's grip like a hologram. He speaks in a calm, flat monotone, describing himself not as a person, but as a residual echo, a video file that has been deleted, but is still taking up space on the hard drive. He is here because his family is worried for him. By his refusal to participate in daily life, Silius has stopped eating and sleeping, claiming that he doesn't need it. Let's dive into this client's childhood and relevant family history to see if that enlightens things even more. Silius's file reveals a childhood marked by a specific event. When he was 7 years old, he wandered off during a family trip to a national park. He was missing for 6 hours. Search teams were deployed, helicopters were launched, but no trace of him was found. Just as the sun was going down, Silius walked out of the woods completely unharmed and silent. He didn't explain where he had been. He told his parents he had been just in a quiet place. The clinician notes that from that day forward, Silius reports he's became obsessed with the idea of invisibility. Sometimes, he reported, he would hold his breath until he passed out, or sit in a room so quietly that his parents wouldn't know where he was. It seems that this seed was planted early on, a deep-seated suspicion that he didn't quite belong to the same reality as everyone else. Let's go into the client's teenager adulthood history. As an adult, Silius became an actuary, working with probability and statistics. He found comfort in numbers because they made sense. He married a woman named Mara and lived a very calculated, predictable life. The break from reality happened about 3 months ago during a highway accident. Silius's car was involved in a collision, but he survived. He walked out of the wreckage without a single scratch. Instead of feeling relief, Silius felt a disconnect. His brain ran the numbers and concluded that the probability of survival of that crash was 0. Therefore, the logical conclusion was that he didn't survive, at least not in the main timeline. He believes that the universe corrected itself, and while his body was walking around, his consciousness went away. To the other side. He went home to his wife, but felt he was like watching her through a TV screen. He eventually moved to the basement because he felt it was deceptive to pretend to be a real husband. Client's behavior in this session. Silius was one of the most baffling patients. I'm about to sneeze. it's gone. Hi, Guan. Hi, Kuryavozer. Silius is one of the most baffling patients to engage with because the logic is circular and unbreakable. He treats the therapy session like a scientific curiosity. He frequently tests his own non-existence. In one session, he stood in front of the automatic motion sensor lights in the hallway. When the lights flickered on, he didn't accept that as proof he was there. He sighed and said, "The sensors are glitching. They're picking up on a draft of wind, not a person." He refuses to look in mirrors. When the clinician asked why, Silius explained, "It's unsettling to see a reflection when there is no object casting it." He describes a sensation of total weightlessness, as if gravity no longer applies to him. He is polite, but he speaks about Silius in the third person often, viewing his body as a suit he is forced to wear until the universe finally realizes its mistake and deletes him properly. Suspected diagnosis. Silius presents with a sanitized but severe form of Cotard's delusion, often called the walking ghost syndrome. It is a rare neuropsychiatric condition where the patient holds the unshakable belief that they do not exist, or that parts of them have vanished. The clinician believes that this is a case that has been pushed to the limit due to the accident. This caused his brain to unplug from his body in a way to protect him from the shock. However, instead of that shock wearing off, his brain rationalized the numbness as erasure. He is numb. He believes he is a glitch in the simulation. So how does one do this treatment? Well, there are a few different ways that you can help somebody with this specific diagnoses. We need to convince the brain that the connection is still live. Logic won't work, so sometimes physical data can be helpful too. Biofeedback training, hooking Silius up to a heart rate monitor with a visual screen, seeing the moving lines with his own pulse, turning his existence into data, the only language that he trusts. We can see that he does enjoy data and numbers from his job, so that could be a jumping point. Sensory reintegration. We can flood his system with undeniable inputs. This involves splashing cold water on the face or using strong aromatherapy, different sensations to have the brain register a signal providing that this server connection is still active. And also video journaling. You know, if Silius believes he's invisible, we can record him interacting with objects and people, playing it back to him. There's all these little small steps we can take to gather up that data for him. All right, let's check the chat. Curvioser Edmonton, hello. I do have the chat on. Matt Frank, maybe he's convinced he's a ghost. Yeah, you nailed it there. Absolutely. Yeah, Guan, thank you. That's right. So this is a really intriguing diagnosis. It is a real one. And yeah, I found this one really fascinating. Can you imagine really feeling that, you know, you're not here, but you're just existing? The brain is so funny, and I love to call the brain just like a wibbly wobbly mushy thing, and sometimes it gets things wrong, right? So it's okay, especially when you're having kind of like negative thoughts. Just because you're having negative thoughts or having negative feelings doesn't necessarily mean that they're right. You can challenge those things sometimes. You know, if you're feeling really down or hard about yourself, you can say, you know, where is this coming from? Kind of taking it a bit of a deeper level, right? I'm being too hard on myself. Where's this coming from? Is this something that was taught to me when I was a kid that, you know, being hard on myself is good? It's going to inspire me to be better. Maybe I can rewrite that script. And that's the fun thing. We can always learn things. Hi, Adele. How are you doing? Welcome to the live. Okay. No, I am not AI. I know it's hard to tell, eh? AI is getting more and more hard to tell the difference, that's for sure. All right, guys, let's go on to the next case file. This one is called The Man Trapped in Tuesday. And our subject is Julian K., the client presenting issue. Julian K. is a 28-year-old piano tuner who appears physically healthy but exudes an aura of profound, crushing boredom. He does not look anxious or scared. He looks exhausted, like a man who has been forced to watch the same movie for 10 hours straight. Julian did not seek therapy to get better. He sought therapy because he claims he has already had this session 1,000 times, and he wants to see if he can finally change the dialogue. Julian's delusion is specific and all-consuming. He believes he is stuck in a time loop. He insists that he wakes up every morning on the same Tuesday. According to Julian, the world resets when he sleeps, but his memories do not. He claims that he has lived this specific day so many times that he has memorized every car that drives past his window, every word on the radio, and every question that this clinician is about to ask. He sits in his chair slouching and says, "Go ahead, ask me about my mother. You always start with a mother." Client, childhood, and relevant family history. Julian was a child prodigy in music. His file shows that he had a perfect pitch and an uncanny ability to memorize piano concerts after hearing them only once. His brain was wired for patterns, it seemed. If a teacher played the wrong note, Julian would physically flinch. He grew up in a high-pressure environment where mistakes were not allowed and frowned upon. His father was a strict orchestra conductor who demanded precision. There is a critical medical note in his teenage years. He suffered from meningitis at around 16, which caused high fevers and swelling in the brain. After recovering, he complained of echoes. He told his parents when people spoke to him, he felt like he had heard that conversation before, that feeling of deja vu. At the time, doctors dismissed it. The clinician suspects that this was the first warning sign of something going on in his temporal lobe, the part of the brain that processes memory and familiarity. The client, teenager, and adulthood history. Before his full break from reality, Julian's life was struggling. He quit his job tuning pianos because he couldn't stand the repetition, which is ironic. He began to isolate himself from friends. When he asked why, he explained that they were just too predictable. He felt he knew the punchline to every joke before it was told. The loop began to amp up 6 months ago. Julian was hospitalized for severe malnutrition. When the doctors asked why, he said, "I already remember eating breakfast. I can remember the taste of the toast and the coffee. If I remember it, why do I need to do it again?" He had begun to confuse the memory of an action with the act of doing it. To Julian, eating a meal and remembering a meal felt exactly the same. He stopped watching TV, reading books, going outside, because his brain had told him, "You've already done this. It's a rerun." Julian's behavior in the session was interesting. He did not make eye contact. Instead, he stares at the clinician's mouth. And as the clinician speaks, Julian's lips move slightly mouthing the words along with him. It gives the impression that Julian is reading the script and clinician is just an actor saying his lines. To test this, the clinician tried to be a bit unpredictable. Julian didn't flinch. He just sighed and said, "You dropped the blue book again." The clinician notes that Julian can't predict lottery numbers as this was another test that they had tried. The brain processes information instantly and stamps it as an old memory the second it happens. So the moment he knocks a book off the table, Julian's brain lies to him and says, "Remember this happening yesterday?" He's living in a permanent state of deja vu that's so strong, it feels like it overrides reality. All right, let's check in on the chat before we read the suspected diagnosis. Hi, Nata. You can call me Johanna or Joe. I don't think anybody's ever called me Hannah before. Not in my life, no. That's great, though. Maybe that could be a new nickname. Let me scroll up a bit. Oh, thanks, Adele. That's very nice. Matt, yeah, I thought of Groundhog Day, too, when I read this one. It's really great, isn't it? I love the Groundhog Day movie. I think that was one of my first movies that I saw. Oh my gosh, now I'm blanking on the actor's name. Come on. Bill Murray. Bill Murray, yes. That was one of the first movies I ever watched with him, and he is such a gem. Do I watch Stranger Things? Yes, I do. I wasn't a big fan of the latest season. There were some good parts, but also some bad parts. Oh, yeah. Matt, you watched something like that where there was a girl who thought it was their prom day every day after. Yeah, absolutely. It can happen. I'm doing good, Nat. Thanks for checking in. I hope you guys are all doing well, too. Let me know how you're doing as I read the suspected diagnosis. This clinician identifies this as a rare condition known as chronic deja vu, meaning already lived. Unlike simple deja vu, feeling like you've been there before, chronic deja vu revolves around the sensation that you have already lived through these events and predict what comes next. It is likely caused by temporal lobe epilepsy or dysfunction on the hippocampus. Julian's brain is misfiring. Normally, when we experience something new, our brain inputs it in the short-term memory box. Julian's brain is skipping that step and throwing everything directly into the long-term memory box. Every new moment feels like an old memory. He's not a time traveler. He's a man whose brain has lost the ability to feel that surprise. The tragedy is that when he steps into the past, in reality, he's incapable of experiencing the present. So, what kind of therapy would you give somebody like this? There's a few different things that can be done. Medication is one of the main treatments. And it is the primary treatment. It's not actually therapy because medication used for epilepsy can calm the electrical firing input in the temporal lobes, stopping that false memory signal from firing. Though if they were to focus a little bit more on therapy, there could be mindfulness. It seems that Julian's spending a lot of time in his head, questioning things. Therapy could work on bottom-up processing. So he would be guided to focus on the physical sensations in the present moment, and that's when we notice the feeling of our chair underneath us, the breathing, rather than over-intellectualizing everything. Anchoring him to the now, which hopefully would help him in time bypass those faulty memory circuits. Okay, let's check in here. Nat is asking, bye Edmonton. Thanks for subscribing. I appreciate that. I really do. Adele, thank you so much for checking in too. Yeah, feel free to subscribe if you like these kind of things. We do all sorts of fun things here on the channel. I talk about mental health in all sorts of fun, quirky ways. Like this video, guys, that would always help because it gets the video out there. And Nat asks, do I think there's anything better than Stranger Things? That's a good question. TV-wise, what am I watching right now? I'm watching Full Metal Alchemist. I never watched it. Heard a lot of good things. That one's pretty wild. It was definitely not what I was expecting. I thought it would be kind of like heavy metal vibes because of the name, but no. If you're looking for something new, kind of similar to Stranger Things in the kind of sci-fi era, maybe Doctor Who, starting with the season 1 of the reboot. Really good stuff. Christopher Eccleston, David Tennant, they're great. All right, guys, on to the next. Let's see here. This is the last file I have, so pay attention. Maybe you can figure this one out. I think this is one of my favorite files. So our client in this file is called Felix. He's a 34-year-old sous chef who presents with significant weight loss and a look of constant mild nausea. He enters the office wearing a heavy industrial-grade headphones. He does not speak at first, but instead he writes on a notepad, "Please speak slowly. Your accent might be spicy." Felix is not deaf, nor is he hallucinating. He is seeking help because he has a romantic interest and he's hoping to make things work. His romantic life and career are on the verge of collapsing due to something he's experienced ever since he was a child. It's called a unique sensory overlap, in his words. He recently proposed to the love of his life, a woman named Monica, but the problem? Felix claims that every time he says, hears, or reads the name Monica, he experiences an overwhelming physical taste of wet dog fur in his mouth. He loves her deeply, but he cannot kiss her, say her name, or introduce her to her friends without feeling this horrible taste in his mouth. He is desperate to change the flavor of his fiancée so he can marry her. Client childhood and family history. Felix's condition manifested early. Those family mistook it for picky eating. At age 4, he refused to play with the neighbor's boy named Kyle. When his mother asked why, Felix explained, because he tastes like vinegar. His mother assumed he had just licked the friend or something. By elementary school, it became clear that for Felix, language is not just sound, it was taste. The alphabet had a menu. The letter A tasted like apple slices, the letter K like hard-boiled eggs. He struggled in history class because the subject reminded him of salty licorice, and hearing it repeated over and over again made him very thirsty. He learned to avoid people whose names had a bad texture. He couldn't be friends with Graham because Graham tasted like dry oatmeal. He gravitated towards friends with the names like Lola, which tasted like cherry syrup, or Sam, buttered toast. Client's adulthood history. Felix had leaned into his condition. He entered the culinary world where his crossed wires made him a real genius. He didn't just pair ingredients, he paired them with a conversation going on at the restaurant. He created dishes designed to be eaten while talking. He knew if a couple was having an argument, the sharp words would make the wine taste sour, so he would send over a dessert that tasted like apology, which to him tastes like warm vanilla and mint, to balance the palate. However, the condition does have dark sides. Felix cannot read words with, specific taste, which makes him hard to read any books. Those certain words taste like dirt. He cannot watch the news because the speed of talking feels like it's force feeding him a buffet of mismatched flavors. He describes information overload like indigestion. The crisis with his fiancée Monica is the breaking point. He tried to call her Mon, which tastes like bread, but she wants him to say her full name. He is currently really struggling to eat because the bad taste of her name lingers for hours, ruining his actual appetite. The client's behavior in session is interesting. When the clinician introduced themselves, Felix winces. Your first name, Felix says, very metallic. But your last name is nice, tastes like cold pear. Throughout the session, Felix reacts physically to the clinician's vocabulary. He admits that sometimes he feels like a prisoner in his own palate. Suspected diagnosis. Felix has a textbook, albeit severe, case of lexial gustatory synesthesia. That's a mouthful. This is a rare neurological condition where the stimulation of one sense, like hearing or reading a word, involuntarily triggers a secondary sense, taste. It is estimated that less than 0.12% of the population has this form of synesthesia. It is not a disorder in the traditional sense. His brain is healthy, just hyperconnected. The neural pathways between the language center in his temporal lobe and the taste center in his insula are infused. He's just experiencing a consistent, repeatable sensory reality. Monica will always taste like wet dog or fur to him because the link is biological. He feels like it is biological, not psychological. All right, let's check in with the chat. Maz, you say, what does the letter P taste like? Yeah, I'm curious. I would like to say pears, maybe. Yeah, this one I had never heard of before. I had heard of, I think it's also synesthesia, where music looks like colors to some people. Who is it? Somebody really famous has it, a specific music writer. The guy who wrote Happy, because I'm happy, clap along if you think. What's his name? Somebody knows his name, I'm sure. Yeah, they did a documentary about him, and he has that condition where music looks like colors to him. He can see this nice, vivid imagery when he hears music. So absolutely, this condition can be like a superpower because you're experiencing things in a different way than a lot of people, which makes you unique, and you could do unique things with that, right? What do you think your name, Maz, would taste like? Or Matt, what do you think your name would taste like? I think Johanna would taste like maybe seaweed. Yep, sticking with seaweed. Let's talk about the proposed treatment plan. We cannot cure synesthesia, nor should we try to sever unique neural connections, right? The goal is management and adaptation. So number one, we could attempt to dull the intensity of the trigger words. So Felix can try repeating the name Monica hundreds of times in a row while eating something with a strong, pleasant flavor like peppermint or cinnamon. The goal is trying to create a new association, like a flavor override. So his brain begins to link the sound of her name with the new, stronger taste. If you guys know me, I love hypnosis. Hypnosis is great for conditioning and association. So that would be something I would try if I was working with this client, to really, pair that new association flavor. Can be really helpful. They can always try couples counseling focused on finding a pet name for his fiance that tastes delicious to him. You know, Felix suggests darling, which tastes like caramel, or honey, which ironically tastes like oranges. You know, the partner can understand, I'm sure, with time, hopefully, that this is a biological symptom. You know, it's not a rejection of who she is as a person. And then also, there could be sensory palate cleansers. So Felix could be encouraged to carry strong tasting gum or lozenges to help with his appetite if he's really bombarded by bad words in a meeting or conversation. He can use a strong sensory input to drown out those phantom tastes, allowing him to focus on the person rather than the flavor of their speech. All right, guys, what did you think of that one? I think that one is pretty fun. I hope you guys like this. And again, I really appreciate you guys tuning in again. Feel free to like the video, subscribe if you like this kind of thing. Let's check in. Matt says it's hard not to make it one of your favorite foods. Matt, what's your favorite food? Let me know. The good news is too, I think I've fixed the delay in my comments. I feel like they're popping up a lot quicker. Before, it was taking like up to, you know, like 10-30 seconds to see your guys' messages on my little chat. Matt, do you think I'm answering quicker? Let me know. Hopefully, yes. And also, feel free to leave the comments if you guys have any ideas for topics for next week. I'm going to start the poll soon. For the topics, we do different topics every week. This week was weird ways to relax. Sometimes we do more silly themes, sometimes a little bit more serious. We even did a little bit more evil, dangerous themes at times. Oh, okay. Matt's name tastes like salmon. Absolutely. We'll lock that in. Johanna tastes like seaweed. Matt tastes like salmon. Perfect. All right, guys. Well, that's it from me. I hope you guys have a great rest of the week, and I'm gonna post a poll of specific topics. Ice Ice Baby. Yeah, Random Fault. Great song. Amazing song. Okay, guys. Well, I'm signing off, and keep an eye out for that poll, okay? Bye. Malty, goodbye.